We'll start with BYD and these potential price cuts. What level are we talking about here, and what does this mean for both the Chinese EV market and the global?
Well, look, even BYD, with its advantages in supply chain and battery technology, they're not immune to these price wars. In fact, they've probably been driving it at certain points. All the companies there are going for market share, and there's sort of a Darwinian play going on in China, where the government does absorb losses or helps a lot of these companies who keep cutting their prices. Help keeps them afloat, but this doesn't go on forever, and the Chinese government knows that over time it's going to winnow down to a few players. Even with that, even with all this government subsidy and support that these companies get, BYD's got to maintain their profit margins. They're one of the few Chinese EV makers that's actually making money, so they're leaning on their suppliers to do it, to get a little bit more firepower to keep dropping prices. We saw Tesla drop prices just about a week ago. They offered a special deal in China for the Model Y. It's a temporary deal, but that's just part of the game over there. Everybody is cutting prices and in many cases losing money to get market share, and that's why the Western auto companies have been leaving, because they don't want to play that game.
David, there's a great function on the Bloomberg that we used a lot during the first Trump administration, ECTR Go, maps global trade. And when the Trump tariffs were announced on, what's it called, Truth Social the other day, I noted that the three countries that he called out, Mexico, Canada, and China, are our biggest trading partners. And that's in total trade. But of course, in your industry, even bigger, right? Not China so much yet, but Canada and Mexico are where a lot of the biggest factories are for General Motors, for Ford, for Stellantis. How is this next administration, this new Trump administration, going to affect the companies that you cover most?
Look, you're talking about 2.3 million cars coming into the U.S. from Mexico last year, and that's a pretty good annualized number, plus a lot of parts that go back and forth across the border, and that doesn't count Canada. So look, there's a ton of trade here. If Trump came good on these threats to levy bigger tariffs, he'd basically be tearing up USMCA, which was his version of NAFTA anyways. You are talking about more inflation in car prices, period. The car companies will try to pass on any increases to consumers, and if they don't, their margins erode. So it's not good for them if all of this comes to pass. And car companies, they can't just find a new source of parts in the U.S. overnight. It takes a couple of years to build plants and reroute supply chains. So look, it would have a massive ripple effect just on the 2.3 million vehicles coming out of Mexico alone. And then you're talking about all the parts flow and so forth. And yeah, it's a huge deal if he's going to really go that big. However, he's made threats like that in the past and not come through on them. So we'll see.
I wonder, David, how this then affects the auto workers. And I know you cover the business of cars, not the politics of Michigan, but a lot of those factory floor workers voted for Donald Trump, pushed him over the edge in that swing state. And if these tariffs drive up the prices of those vehicles, aren't they going to have a harder time making money, keeping jobs?
Now, look, sales go down, workers' jobs are more at risk. And, that is a big threat to those workers. For a long time, though, they've just worried about watching their jobs go overseas. And Trump became their hero, promising to do that. And we do have huge tariffs that keep a lot of cars coming in from China. And, there were some things in USMCA, like mandating 40% of the parts content of a vehicle in order to get the cheaper tariff coming into the U.S. from Mexico. What that basically said was the parts had to come from Canada or the United States. That did probably stop the flow of some jobs from Canada and the U.S. Into Mexico. So there are some things that Trump has delivered for them. I think there are other reasons that union workers have voted for Trump. A lot of them are socially conservative, so they're more in tune with his platform. But he has delivered in some ways on this, but look, there are a lot of unintended consequences for auto workers if prices go sky high because of tariffs, absolutely.